Begin transmission. Hello, everybody. This is Chris, aka Starrapter, with the Outer Rim Transmissions, episode 119. This week, it's all about Ahsoka, the long-awaited standalone kind of tie-in to the Mandalorian universe has now been released. We got the first two episodes to talk about Part 1, Master and Apprentice, Part 2, Toil and Trouble. We're going to be diving into all of that this week. But first, how you guys doing?
Good, man. I'm glad to be here, ready to talk some Ahsoka. I'm sure we all have various opinions on the premiere in episode 2, so I'm just ready for the show tonight.
Heck yeah. So what about you, Ben?
Oh yeah, I'm excited to talk about Ahsoka. Watched it a few times this week. Had some interesting feedback from different people I know, like in real life, enjoying it. So it was a pretty good week, and was looking forward to getting on here to talk about it.
Yeah, so we're gonna be kind of foregoing our usual banter because there's just so much to get into with these two episodes. It was basically like the length of a movie. We're gonna get to that as soon as we take care of some business. So first of all, you can always listen to us on any podcast streaming service of your choice. Just search Outer Rim Transmission. I get those episodes, the new ones out usually in the middle of the week. We could also tune in live though and get your quicker response by watching youtube.com/Starrapter. Make sure you go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and tell your friends about us. We want to kind of expand this positive Star Wars community that we've been building for over 2 years now. So join us aboard. We always have a fun time in the chat room and it's absolutely free of charge. So go ahead, tell all your friends. This week we have just one release. It's Dr. After issue number, I think it's issue number 36, I believe. Pretty fun. Other than that, that's basically about it. So, yes, we're jumping right into the deep end here. I will put it to Ben. I kind of want to get the kind of like the backdrop of where you were, how your viewing experience was, because mind you, this was a little bit different than we're used to. Some of us are watching this after we get home from work. When it comes to a Star Wars series, some of us are staying up till like 3 a.m. or some of us are perhaps waking up around 4 a.m. to watch some of the stuff that would go up. But this time we got some great news from Lucasfilm that they were putting this out at prime time the day before. So Ben, how was your viewing experience this time around?
Yeah, it was nice for once not being able to, or not having to stay up until basically 4:30 in the morning after we get done with the episode and by the time you go to sleep. So that was really nice. And then the fact that it was like an actually a reasonable time of release, like it was just so convenient. And then like, my best friend who comes over and watches every week, like he enjoyed it. So it was cool just like getting to like experience that. We all ordered pizza, him, my dad, and our family, we all ordered pizza to watch it. And it made it more of like a little event versus just like, hey, watching a random Star Wars show. So like that was a big part of it. And then like even my friend, when he left, he was like, man, this is the first time in like God knows how long after watching a Star Wars show, like I'm actually like excited to like come back next week and talk about it with you or whatever, versus leaving and being like, oh no, hopefully it gets better because this is pretty bad, like, so like it's good to see that general reaction. And like even with some of my more extended family, like my grandma, she watched it that night. My uncle, him and my aunt watched it that night, and they all three enjoyed it. So like it was good hearing feedback like that just from like just the average, not even average Star Wars fans, the very casual fans that turn on Disney and are like, oh, a new Star Wars show is coming out. So like it was good getting like that sort of feedback. But yeah, that was kind of like my Tuesday night for the Ahsoka premiere.
You're muted.
Okay, I'm somehow muted when I didn't realize I was. That's take a shot, everybody, if you're playing along, drinking with me, doing the mute game. But yeah, Milton, I know that you're fortunate enough to get the following day off. Usually you have to get up really early in the morning, and you're very busy with your work. How was your viewing experience with Ahsoka?
It was good. Like I said, it was nice to watch it like the following day, not have to like have a time constraint. When it comes to rushing. Overall, I had a good time with it. Do I have some issues with the show? Yes. And I voiced that in our group chat, but I think it has a lot of promise. I think that certain things that they're doing was on purpose, and we'll get into it. Overall, I'm excited to what they have, what they're thinking of doing, what they're showing us. Again, I do have some reservations. However, I had a good experience with this, so I'm not checked out yet.
Not checked out yet. Probably not the type of review I was expecting from you, but I'm also kind of in the same territory, to be honest. As far as my viewing experience was, I liked it because I usually work till 8 o'clock, so it gave me just enough time to take care of some errands on the way home from work, get home, and then actually watch it with somebody for a change. So I watched it with my mother. And that was really fun because I'm the guy that's going to be sitting there pointing out, oh, that character's from this, oh, this character's from that. So I enjoy doing that as at the quiet moments. I'm not trying to talk over dialogue or anything, but I'm like, oh, this is this person, and she was seeing my reaction, like probably like, okay, my son's maybe too much into this stuff because I'm like seeing the ship, seeing the I'm like leaning in my chair for most of the episode trying to, you know how it is the first time you watch these, you're just on bated breath, like what's gonna happen, what's gonna happen. But for me, it was just a lot clearer watching the episode when I'm like, right off of work rather than all groggy waking up in, early in the
Yep.
morning. So I was able to absorb it a little bit better. um and overall, I think it did add for the viewing experience to be better, because it added that anticipation. It's like, oh yeah, I get something to look forward to when I get home from work because I just have to get home and get the TV ready, and that's the end of that's the reward for the end of the getting to the end of the day. So that was a nice thing to kind of just relax and get into the Star Wars headspace on a Tuesday night. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, so as far as my, we'll go over initial impressions. Thanks for giving us your initial impressions, Milton. And I'll throw it over to you, Ben, once I share mine. But yeah, I was very, very satisfied. I think would be the right word. Was I overwhelmed? No. Was I underwhelmed? No. It was kind of like right there in the middle, where it's like, yeah, these episodes, they did their job. I think if I compared these to other premieres, if I believe it or not, if I compare this to the Obi-Wan premiere, I think that even was better for me. Um, Andor premiere is probably better than me. I'm trying not to compare it to other properties in Star Wars, but it is kind of hard not to sometimes. Um, but I think where I get the hung up on is the naming of the show. They should have called this the Sabine Wren show, if you asked me, but I don't think it would get nearly as much clout and popularity if they branded it that way.
I
But we
mean,
know that
for real, it could have just called this Rebel Season 5.
that is even better. Yeah, 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 yeah. So I think they did okay, but like, yeah, certain characters, like I said I was bought into the Hera character, but with that one little sequence, and I kind of backpedal now because I'm like, okay, there's a lot of nitpicky things. I know, Ben, you were saying this in the chat. Yeah, a lot of the things I say are nitpicky, but enough of the nitpicky things add up to where like it takes down a couple points for me off the show. uh Ahsoka, not I just feel like she's not very charismatic in these first episodes, and it kind of bothers me. Like this is the namesake of the show, and I feel like I'm not getting enough character out of her right now. And I know it could be better, but like if we're looking at this as a premiere, I wanted a little bit more from her. I just want a little bit more from her. I will say, as Milton, you were saying in our chat, like the action's great. The choreography is fantastic. It's great seeing really, really awesome lightsaber duels again. Um, Certain scenes kind of lingered on, and that was another thing. Like whether it be the speeder bike chase down the Lothal Highway, cutting back and forth, like that went on too long. Again, a little nitpick, but the dialogue and the sequencing of the delivery of certain bits of information just felt like they dragged on. And maybe it's refreshing to Star Wars to have something like this, I guess people are saying, but like I just expected things to be like more snappy, snap and go, kind of like a little bit more dynamic. And it was just like, all right, you have characters talking in interior one, and they're just kind of like they say something, there's like a awkward pause, and then another line, a reply to that, and it just like caught me off guard. Where I'm like, this doesn't really feel as much as Star Wars as it usually does. It's kind of weird the way it is. So yeah, real quick, we're gonna talk about all the episodes in a lot of detail. I love the introduction of the new characters. Balon Skull, great. Shin, great. Great seeing Morgan Elsbeth, seeing all that stuff. The combat was great. The visuals were great. This is the best looking show I think to date, as far as like the amount of extras, the amount of CGI, the amount of little details in the background. It feels more like a movie. It's just some of the characters are what were the drawback for me. I'll throw it over to you, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, for me, when it comes to that, like I can see where you're coming from on a lot of those points, but a lot of those points for me personally, I personally disagree on. Like I just really, I had a really good time with the premiere. Like I thought, of course, as you mentioned, like all the highlight points, like the action points, those were all great. The fact I don't think we mentioned it yet. I loved the opening crawl to help set the tone
Oh yeah,
more,
yeah,
especially
yeah.
with it being in red. Like I thought that was really well done, just because again, like I think a lot of these decisions they like Dave and what's her name? Carrie Beck, I believe. Those are like two of the main people involved on this show. Like, I think a lot of the decisions they made for this premiere is focused around catching a lot of the general audience up to speed with what's going on, who our characters are, like generally speaking. You have to establish Sabine as kind of like a rebellious character, which you get that basically. You have to establish Ahsoka as a skilled Jedi, which they showed her skill against the like HK droids. So like you have those general things, and then you have to establish of Hera, of course, as like a Republic general, and like her being kind of like the moral compass character, like she was in Rebels. They do that. So I think those were a lot of the reasons for the pacing, and just the overall editing of the episodes is for like a lot of the general audience members, because us as hardcore Star Wars fans, we're looking at this and we're just like wanting to jump right into like hit
Yep.
the ground running Rebels
Yep.
season 5. And you got to remember, like, that's not where we're at. Like, that's not where we're at
Okay.
at all, because Chris's mom and my grandma have never watched a minute of Rebels other than on accident. Like, so, so like that's the big thing I think a lot of Star Wars fans forget about, is like if you're talking Star Wars online, like on Twitter, on YouTube, or whatever, you're in the minority of the overall viewing audience, for the most part, because the average people don't. So like that's that's where I think the big disconnect is like, Dave even mentioned you don't have to watch Rebels to understand what's going on. Like he mentioned
Mhm.
that months ago. So it's just like I think that's where a lot of the decision making came from. And then I think like with me, when it came to a lot of those moments, like with Ahsoka or Sabine, like when they were like lingering on those characters more, I think, anyways, like it was feeling like more like character reflection moments than moments that were necessarily like just a quick snappy edit and move on. Like I feel like they're more meant to be more like yeah, character reflection moments. Um, but yeah, so like overall for me, like I thought the premiere was really good. To me, it was the best premiere like by a mile since Mandalorian season 2. I don't think like I even watched just for like a fun exercise this week. I watched the premieres of the other shows
Oh.
just to like that would have been my week in Star Wars if we would have started that started with that. But yeah, so I watched the premieres of the other shows, and like and then I watched this one again actually over the
Hmm.
weekend with my cousin, and I just yeah, like for me, I feel like this was the most interesting premiere from a standpoint of like action, um, solid characters, and those type of things, and then introducing a new threat, and just the fact, I think they did a good job of like sewing the threads of the potential threat of Thrawn, like the last Imperial Grand Admiral, that whole spiel, and then like the introduction of Balin and Shin,
Yeah.
were so good. Like to me, that felt like the anti version of the Phantom Menace, like the negative
Oh
version
yeah.
of the Phantom Menace. And then
Definitely.
then there's the other shot of them where it literally was just like a shot for shot remake of Darth Maul on the hill with the droids. Like it was on
Oh.
Tatooine. Like
Oh yeah.
it just felt just like another shot from Phantom Menace. Like so they definitely took inspiration from that. Um, but yeah, that's kind of like my overall, just my general rundown of the premiere of like what I liked and enjoyed, and then of course the music. Kevin Kiner nailed the
Oh
music on
yeah.
this.
The music. Music plays a big part of Star Wars. I go back to Kenobi a lot, and Kenobi didn't last any impression at all. No impression left by Kenobi. I'm sorry about the composer. I don't know her name off the top of my head. She did great stuff in Loki, and that has memorable. I remember humming and really jiving to that song, and I wondered like what was lost in translation to the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, because honestly, with that series, it felt like certain dialogue scenes. It was like a soap opera music in the background. I know that because my mother watches them daily. I'm like, you guys couldn't have done something a little bit more epic there. I mean, come on. But then going to Kevin Kiner, like we've been asking for this guy to come to the live action stuff for years now. And it's like, what took him so long? Because this is the best live action music I've heard yet in a Star Wars series.
Oh, yeah. Well, it always felt with Kevin Kiner, it always felt to me anyways, it was like, nah, you're the animated music guy. You stay over there. Like, that's what it always felt like. And it's like now he's finally getting his shot to do live action and he's continuing to perform. Like, it's really good. Like, I'm really happy that that was able to do it. But yeah, like music, like you said, is really important.
Yeah. What did you think about the music there, Milton?
Loved it. I've always been a big fan of Kevin Kiner. I mean, he's pretty much, I mean, because he did Clone Wars too, right?
Oh, hell yeah.
Yep. Oh, yeah. So, like, because I mean, obviously, I'm a huge fan of Clone Wars, and I love the way he used music in Clone Wars and how he transitioned it into Rebels. I will say, Mandalorian's music is pretty damn good
It's
too.
pretty good.
What's his name? Ludwig something.
Ludwig Göransson.
Yeah, he did the Black Panther movies, which I love that soundtrack. But I would say him, Kevin Kiner, and even Michael Giacchino, who did Rogue One, because I love that soundtrack. That's top 5 for me when it comes to Star Wars. So Kevin Kiner is probably the closest to John Williams when it comes to rhythms, timing, meshing old themes with new. I mean, in a lot of ways, you would, if you didn't know who he was, you would think, oh, that's John Williams' like disciple. You know, like, that's his apprentice. How he uses music. I love the music. It stood out for me. Love the open and crawl. The open and crawl did get my attention. I loved it how it was in red. It reminded me very much of the First Order. And then obviously like the first 5 minutes of the show was very appealing. Like it caught you. It sucked you in. You're like, okay, who are these dark Jedi or Sith or whomever they are? Because we don't know what they're calling themselves yet, or dark Force users. It made you like, oh shit, this is actually something that's happening. Overall, I thought the visuals of this show looked amazing, and I'm sure we'll get more specifically about what we liked. But I overall liked what I saw. I think my voicemail that I left you guys in the group chat, it was very much like pacing threw me off. Ahsoka's rhythms threw me off a little bit. But we have to realize she is 30-something, 40-something years old. So people tend to change when they get older. She's no longer 17. You know, we remember Ahsoka as hyperactive and hyper-focused and very talkative and, you know, arrogant. I mean, she's still arrogant, but she don't have that childlike energy no more. You know, she's very much jaded. You see that. So I say that kind of threw me off, but then I have to remember, what she's been through. Like I said, I have a lot of good things to say about it. I have some negative things, but again, I will get into this.
Let's talk about the crawl. Man, I don't know about you, Ben, but I didn't see this coming. Did you know about this ahead of time?
No, like I knew a lot of things about this show, and this is definitely not one of them. Like when that opening crawl started, my friend and like my family, they were like, "What the heck is like my dad who knows nothing, like he couldn't tell you if this was Darth Vader in this show or who, like he wouldn't be able to tell you a thing about this show." But like he was like, "Wait, are we watching he said, he was like, I don't have time to watch a 2.5-hour Star Wars movie. I said, no, it's a show. It's like an hour and 20 minutes. Like, so, you know, it kind of already set the tone. Like I had to laugh because, you know, when he said that, but it's like, it was cool because it caught everybody's attention. Like my dad was actually the first one to like speak, which was hilarious. Cause like he normally never talks during shows. And he was just like, wait, is this a movie? But yeah, I thought it was a really nice way to set the tone. The fact that it was in the red, so it set like the ominous feeling. And then the lead-in, because see, I was ready to critique the graphics of the crawl being red versus the traditional style, because I was like, wait, if we go from red into Ahsoka, Sabine, or Hera, it's going to be weird because you're setting an ominous tone. So I immediately thought we have to be going straight to either Morgan Elsbeth or maybe even Balin to start, and then it happens to be Balin and Shin. So like I thought it was a great setup for the series as a whole, and to set the tone, like to kind of like like to catch people up to speed, like, hey, read it, it'll catch you up to speed a little bit. And then of course just setting the tone leading into what we see with Balin and Shin.
Yeah, it's interesting because I could spend a whole episode just on this darn crawl, just from like the philosophy of it, because we know that Lucasfilm was so dead set on their ways of, we're making the film special because they're the only thing now in Star Wars existence that's going to have an opening crawl. No video games, no TV series, nothing. So this is the first time we've seen a crawl since 2019. It's been 4 years.
Yeah, Dave Filoni's like, yeah, forget that.
So that's cool because it really opens up the viewers into what they're expecting. Again, we're getting a lot of first-time viewers that aren't familiar with these characters, that aren't familiar with Thrawn. Why is he important? So we're already laying those seeds for the casual audience of, okay, this is what the series is about. We're jumping in now, and I like how, again, we're going to jump into this first sequence now. Milton, you've talked a little bit about Balin Skull and Shin Hati. Just this, and then Ben, you mentioned about the anti-Phantom Menace perspective of things. First off, I just love that we're finally getting to see the New Republic military. We know that they decommissioned like 95% of their forces, but they do have like the Home One around. They do have other big ships like this, and I like, and I was telling you guys this on the chat, about how you have such a clear trajectory from where we see Ahsoka in season 2, where she has Morgan Elsbeth as a prisoner, and now we're seeing, okay, where is that prisoner held? So it was a really nice, easy kind of tie-in, like a backdoor pilot in season 2 of Mando, to be like, okay, yeah, you remember that person? Okay, this is her, and this is where our story picks up. And I like that we get that sense of foreboding, like, oh, we have these two people. They say they're Jedi. It's like, wait, what Jedi are even around anymore? Can these people be serious? And just like the arrogance of that New Republic officer to be like, yeah, I don't believe you're Jedi. And he's like, we are no Jedi. You get such great action and just the mystery. There's so much with Star Wars, whether, J.J. Abrams really is good on those mystery box things and all that he put in Force Awakens. Like, I had that sort of feeling like, okay, like we're getting these characters. We haven't seen them before. They're Jedi, maybe. Where'd they learn their training? Like, instantly, I want to know more about these people. And the fact that Ray Stevenson, God bless the guy, I've seen him in the presence of him, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this poor guy is giving a hell of a performance. And we know he passed away recently. But yeah, what was your thoughts in more detail about this scene here, Milton?
Fire.
Yep.
It was fire. Like it was that good. I mean, again, this is my brother and I were talking about this before we got on the podcast, because he texted me. I think a day or two after the premiere, but we both agreed that those villains seem like a legit threat to Ahsoka. And I said to him, I said, as much as I'm not a big fan of the sequel trilogy and how that went down, you can clearly see that they put time in this particular show when it comes to lightsaber duels.
Oh,
like we're going to see
Dave said
lightsaber duels, and we're going to see great fighting, as they should. And I was telling my brother, I said, Ahsoka should not get her ass whooped at all in this show unless she's fighting Balin or was it Elsbeth? That's how you say her last name?
Yep.
Yeah, Elsbeth.
Yeah, like Elsbeth, or like, some type of like Jedi who's older, or Sith who's older than her. Because at that point there'll be experience, they'd be strong in the Force, that type of thing. I said, there's no way Ahsoka gets touched in the show. Even when she fought that Inquisitor, you knew she wasn't going to lose because she's that good. And it's like I love how they made her actually really, really good because they can easily do the Disney thing and just make her struggle and make her like be weak. And it's like no, she was trained by freaking Anakin. She was trained by Obi-Wan. She was trained by Yoda and who's the other one? Not Kit Fisto.
Plo Koon.
Plo Koon, yeah. Like she better be wrecking people, and she should only struggle against people that are of her skill or better. I loved how they didn't like depower her, which is amazing.
Yep.
But you never know. It's Disney because my gripe is Rey never struggles when it comes to fighting in the sequel trilogy. She never gets hurt, and she never loses a battle, which is weird to me. But love the action, love the first scene. It set the tone. So at that point, I was clearly locked in. In this, I mean, Balin looks so good wielding that saber, and Shin, okay, like she can do some damage.
Oh yeah. Well, here's the thing about her. Like, I'm sure you guys noticed, like, she has the little Jedi braid, apprentice braid. So it's like, so here's my take, kind of on Balin and Shin. Like, I think they're kind of, I like they would have to be Dark Jedi in my opinion. Like, just because my main I guess like case point for that is like when Balin first comes in, like in theory anyways, if I think his name was Captain Hale, if he would have just let them, of course, who's gonna let you walk into a max security ship and say, hey, let me just release the prisoner, but like in theory, if he would have been able to do that, he wasn't gonna like kill all those people. But the only reason him and Shin resorted to violence was because they said they couldn't do that. Like even Ray Stevenson back at Celebration, like in his interview, like he talked about like Balin basically he'll be fine until you like get in the way of what he wants. So like, it's basically like he's only resorting to like those tactics if he has to. So it's a pretty cool aspect with him. And then Shin, she became more and more of like an interesting character because I really feel like that she just seems like she's going to be one of these characters, especially with the dialogue we get with them later in the premiere. Like, it just feels like Balin and her might eventually end up clashing just because it feels like he's more like reserved and like potentially like, I don't know, I guess thoughtful about things. And she feels more like reactionary or more hard-edged toward like maybe the darker side of things. So like I could see them potentially clashing.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm really interested in both of their characters. Like, and it stinks. Like I messaged you guys in the group chat. Like, it's so sad because I feel like Balin's gonna turn out to be one of my more favorite new characters that we get introduced to, and we don't have Ray Stevenson anymore. It's like, man, like I'm so excited to see where Balin goes because, I mean, heck, based on like where we're heading to next, like we could maybe get Balin and Ahsoka fighting in this next episode potentially.
I really think like that trailer that we see, they're on the planet, and I don't have the damn planet names recognized because unfortunately I'm gonna watch it again right after this podcast with my girlfriend for the first time with her. I've only seen the episode once, so I do not have any of the locations saved in my brain yet. But it looks like they're gonna probably fight next episode, would be my assumption.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they cut it out of the trailers or what, but I never noticed that Shin Hati had a Padawan braid in any of the promotion material. Did they cut that out?
I don't remember, because here's the thing with us, like if she would have had a Padawan braid, we would have talked about it on this podcast.
Yes. And the interesting thing is, okay, so it's been about at least 25 years since Order 66. I don't know. I don't think she's old enough to have been part of the Jedi Order officially, because even Huang is examining the lightsaber hilt, and he's like, this one I do not recognize. He's 26,000 years old. Like, Huang is one of the oldest like things in Star Wars. He's been around the Jedi Order. He has every single thing in his memory bank, but he doesn't have her. So I'm very curious. Like, this is where I would want like a whole book series or a 3-book series on Skull and Hati's like journey through the galaxy as
Tales of the Jedi
training her. Yeah, Tales of the Jedi, of like where he finds this girl and just how you train somebody like that during the dark times when you're mercenaries, because they even have mentioned in the first episode, Elsbeth is saying like, "Oh, you'll do it for coin or something like that." So it's like right there and then it's like, "Oh, this is a quality of a Jedi that we haven't really seen before. A Jedi that's for hire, a saber for hire, essentially."
Yeah. I'm really interested to see where they go. Like I said, and it's gonna be cool seeing like the character matchups between Balin and Ahsoka, and then Shen and Sabine. Like it's gonna be interesting to see like where these character matchups end up landing in the long run of this series.
Yeah. So we got to talk about the main character of the series, Ahsoka, of course. We see her kind of starting out in this series, doing very Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark type of stuff. So I enjoyed that opening. Again, slower pace, kind of investigative, kind of like Batman playing detective of, ooh, where does this go? Where is this leading to? Ooh, and she finds the cool. I was
I saw a lot of people saying Jedi Survivor puzzles.
Oh yeah, there you go, there you go. Great, great combat action sequence, and we see her kind of go through. But yeah, as I was saying off the top, like. And Milton, you kind of hit the nail on the head with this. Like, yeah, but I guess I'm still hung up on the idea that I want my Ahsoka to be like Ahsoka from Clone Wars. And just based off of a lot of trauma in her life, it makes sense that she's a lot more stoic than she used to be. For good reason. She's been through a lot in her long, long life, living through an entire war and all that crap. 2 wars.
And that's the thing. She's been in war. One, I mean, think about it, and this is a common theme too that you picked up on the show with her, and I will get into this later. Is that she tends to run away? So like she has all this trauma of one feeling betrayed by the Jedi Order, and then again, this is for non-Star Wars fans or non-Rebels and Clone Wars fans. You know, she has trauma of being betrayed, not believed, being forced to leave her family, the only family she knew. Then she walked away from her master, who she had a very close relationship with. He turns, spoiler alert, comes Vader. You know, and all of a sudden, like, the Jedi Order is done. And then everything happens for that 20-year span. Then she decides to, you know, help these rebels. And then, what's it name? Kanan dies. Yep. Ezra dies. Her apprentice is done. Like, it's so much for her.
Alderaan blows up.
Like, I mean, yeah, you know she had, because she was still in communication with what's his name,
the rebels in general.
Like,
all that stuff. Like, she experienced so much, so you don't know what's going on in her head. I mean, low key, she's probably a basket case. She's just better at hiding it, you know. So I get it. So if they come back and tell us, and I think we're going to get something like this in an episode where she's changed so much because of what she's witnessed again as a child into adulthood. I can see why her personality would change the way it is now. And that was one of my gripes initially, because I was like, she's just so like low key, like just not calm, just like cold and just like to the point. And it's like, okay, Milton, you have to remember she's literally 37 years old at this point, her character.
Yeah.
She's no longer 17. So
there you go. What about you, Ben? What was your reaction to just the overall character of Ahsoka in these 2 episodes?
Yeah, I mean, I just pretty much echo all of Milton's points. Like, I think she, you know, like she went through a lot of stuff, obviously. And then another point to add on to like your points as well, Milton, about her like running and like failing on things. I mean, look, she left Sabine basically like off screen. I mean, we haven't got the full explanation, but it sounds like she just pretty much said, "Sorry, I'm done with you. I'm not going to train you anymore," or something. Like, you know, she pretty much just fired her as her apprentice or something. So, like, you know, she also has that potential like failure like weighing on her, and then now she's having to like go back to this person to work with them after pretty much firing them. So it's just like, you know, she has a lot of this like building and building and building. And then the thing is too with Ahsoka, I mean, I'm not sure exactly with like the way the World Between Worlds thing works, like with like say Ahsoka like coming back and all this stuff and blah blah blah. But like, I just assumed it had to be something kind of like your, I don't know, I guess like your Back to the Future. Like you can't mess with things in the present, so like she probably couldn't really mess with stuff in the original trilogy era. So like she was probably just like in hiding all the time. So you know you have that on top of everything. So it's just like, yeah, I think there's a lot of like character things like that with her, you know, that came along with that. So I would say that's why. And then I think the big the reason or the big way we could potentially be getting her out of that, or at least being more hopeful, because right now she's not as hopeful. I would say like she's more stoic. I mean, look, when Sabine like loses the map and stuff, like all that stuff, it's just like a lot of stoicism because of those reasons. But I think a big part or a big character that could play a part in that of getting her back, of course, is like Sabine's potential like journey. But of course, like if we run into Anakin, or when we run into Anakin down the road at this point, and then also Hera, like Hera's being like the moral compass figure for her, potentially like giving her advice, giving Sabine advice, like all these things. So I feel like Hera is going to kind of be your moral compass character of the series for all the characters. I mean, the Star Wars talks so much on their social media before the show, like, hey, she's like the mother of the galaxy, or like all the motherly related things. And Hera's playing that kind of like motherly role already.
Yeah, I'd argue that I didn't get enough of that actually, Ben.
Yeah, I wish I had a little bit more Hera, like good feeling. I do wish I had more of like the Milton, you know what I mean? Like more of like the Diggle Oliver pep talk. I wish I would have more like the Hera Ahsoka pep talk from these first 2 episodes.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I mean the thing is though, will they write it in a way where it doesn't waste time?
Yep, that's the big thing.
If they write it in a way where it's impactful and it makes sense and it's needed, sure, I'm all about it. But I just don't want to get caught up in the unnecessary, dialogue that we don't need. Like, just move the show. I mean, again, it's only 8 episodes. Yeah. So that's my fears with these shows. Is like, if it's you have plenty of time to write these and put them together and make them perfect. It's not a 24 episode season. You have to fill it. But no, that makes sense. I really think you're right. That would have been nice to have that Hera motherly, which she kind of was doing that because she was saying like
it was just kind of short.
So short. She's like, well, maybe she wants to come back. Maybe she wants to be your princess. Have you asked her or whatever she says?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's there.
Yeah. So I like the whole, again, a nice tie-in. This episode was to season 2, episode 5, The Jedi, where we see Ahsoka for the first time live action. We get this interesting conversation between Din Djarin and Ahsoka, and they're sitting on a log in the middle of that foresty planet of, she refuses to train Grogu. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would this powerful Jedi, or whatever, I guess she calls herself a Jedi at this point in time, why wouldn't she train Grogu? Now we see she had failed or walked away from Sabine. So I don't know if Dave Filoni had this planned like years and years and years ago. Maybe this was an idea he's had for season 5 of Rebels in animation. This was a storyline. And as we know, that originally the Mandalorian, basically Dave Filoni went up to Kathleen Kennedy and was like, I'm writing this. And Jon Favreau was like, let's make a live action Star Wars thing based on Mandalorians. And Kathleen Kennedy's like, let's just meld the 2 stories you guys are making together. I think this is obviously the Dave Filoni story that he had in mind. And Jon Favreau's series is like leading into this one. So I thought it was pretty cool how we're getting just again more direct tie-ins to like previously, and this is where this is specifically like a tie-in series. Like, yes, you could watch a series without watching The Mandalorian, but now we're getting more of a character arc when you have already watched The Mandalorian. So I appreciate that kind of like, I don't know if like retroactively inserting this or if they had it planned all along, but pretty good stuff there. I want to move on to Sabine Wren. So this was the talk of the town when we got that trailer and we got the big bomb drop where it was like, we know that Sabine is the apprentice of Ahsoka. So, Milton, I'm going to throw it over to you. What did you think of Sabine, the character? What do you think of Lisa Bordura? I forget her name. I'm going to have to memorize that. Ben, do you know the actress's name? Something Lou Bardoza.
Something.
I think it was Natasha.
Natasha Lou Bardoza or something. Yes.
Yep, that's what it is.
What'd you think of the character?
Well, before I get into the character, the actress, she's talented. I didn't know who she was obviously before this. She's a hottie. I mean, she ain't bad to look at, and pretty much like they perfectly cast her for Sabine. Like she looks just like the animation version. I'm just like, God damn, like this is crazy. Like it was that perfect. When I see her, I'm like, oh, that's Sabine. When I look at Hera, I see Obi-Wan's wife. You know what I'm saying? So like, I mean, like, no, I mean I'm not trying to be ignorant like that, but it's like old girl looks exactly like her counterpart from the show. So and it makes sense. But nah, she fire looking, you know, but she's very talented. Um, I'm sure my girl's gonna think that's like obnoxious me saying that, but it's funny. Um, nah, like overall the character, I like the character. I mean, it
Yeah.
made sense. She was very consistent to what she was in the animated show. She was arrogant. She was cocky. She was impulsive. She was very caring and supportive of her team. She just does it differently. She goes about it differently. Again, that's consistently been Sabine, whether it's animation or live action. So I will say they've so far Dave has written that character pretty consistent. So I really can't complain about how he's written her thus far. Now, obviously, if he writes her completely different than what we're used to, hopefully there's a reason for it. But I don't see it. I still think he'll keep it consistent. I haven't seen any complaints online about a particular character when it comes to how she's playing it, because the internet and Star Wars fans they can't always please them. But no, I'm fine with her. I liked how she portrayed the character. I love that she's able to use a lightsaber. The only thing is, don't give her the Force. Don't give her the Force. Like, don't make her a quote unquote an actual Jedi. Like, that's just not needed, because there was never a sense of it in the animation show, of the animation. Like I believe she can use a saber because of the dark saber. That makes sense. But don't give her the Force. That's pushing it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's something about her using a lightsaber with the kyber crystal can somehow spark something in her. Like, we have seen a lot of examples through the Star Wars timeline of characters. Like, look at Luke Skywalker. He was 19 before he realized he could use the Force. Look at...
Oh, I thought in the comic books when he was a kid, he was using it unintentionally, because of his senses, and maybe I thought he was able to like do certain things because of the Force. He just didn't know it.
True.
I'm not sure. I can't remember.
Well, but then kind of like on the same foot of that though, Milton. Like not to counter your point there, but Anakin was unintentionally using the Force in pod racing. That's the only reason he was able to do it as a human. But the thing is, who's to say like was Sabine's reaction times as a Mandalorian? Was it because she's a Mandalorian, or was it because she has the Force assisting her? I think the good thing though that Dave did, that he put in there just a little nugget to shield from the potential like Jedi criticism, is he had Young say, "Hey, you are literally the worst possible like Force user Jedi out there, like ever that I've ever seen. You're literally the worst, the last person possible." So like, it's good that like they put that in there to like, it kind of shields them from criticism, but it also is, I think it's going to set kind of, I mean, I could see this potentially down the line, say in episode 6, 7, 8, like if Sabine hasn't been, I don't know, throwing stuff around with the Force, and people being like, "Hey, why isn't she using the Force? Blah blah blah." Well, it's because Dave already put that in the series. Like he already put that in there. Like, hey, she is the worst possible Force user.
Yeah, I mean,
and the only way I'd be okay with her having powers is if they tied into the Clone Wars. Because do you remember whenever the Darksaber was first introduced, they talked about the first Mandalorian Jedi?
Well,
Whatever clan that was.
Tar Vizsla.
Yeah, is she part of that clan?
Well, here's the thing. What happens if she's the long lost ancestor of that specific guy?
That's what I was about to say.
Yeah.
I was about to say that if they tie it into where he says, okay, she's the lost long ancestor of the first Mandalorian Jedi clan, whatever. All right, that's cool, because I've seen it. Like I've seen him put it already in the show. Yep. That would make sense. I'd be totally fine with that. Yeah. They need to do it. That's how I would write it, because that's a nugget that true Star Wars fans know about. But then I would say to an actual fan, well, who the hell is this? Go back to this episode of Clone Wars. They explain it pretty clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And the cool part about that too, Milton, is if they do go this route of having her become a Jedi, for a lot of the general audience members, I don't know, like your girlfriend watching, or Milton, your mom, or whoever, they'll probably just see her and be like, "Oh, cool, a lightsaber wielding Mandalorian clad character. That's pretty awesome." Like, like that's that'll be a lot of people's like the general people's viewpoints, and us as fans could be like appreciating it more if they like take it that ancestral like lineage route. So like I think that's really good. And like for me, the big thing with her character was I loved her introduction. Like I saw some people nitpicking about her music. I loved the intro music of her on the speeder bike because it felt like Sabine. And Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but I saw some Star Wars, like just random Star Wars people on Twitter talking. What is the music that was playing? Was that like an in-universe thing from like either Jedi Fallen Order or Survivor or like or something or another? I saw someone saying like the music that was playing was music that was taken from like another game, or it was like an in-universe thing or something.
I mean, it certainly sounded like it would fit perfectly in the Kobo Tavern in Jedi Survivor. Yeah.
Okay, that might be where it's from, because I saw a lot of chatter. Like I saw that on several different like review videos, people bringing that up. So it's from something in universe. So I thought that was cool, like a cool incorporation of it. And I just loved, like I said, her introduction. It felt like Sabine's character, and then like the fact that when she fights Shin, like that. Like was her character, like I don't know, it's cool that she still could like fight even though she's not a full-blown Jedi. Like she's still a warrior. Like
yes, and here's something I really didn't like about the episode. As cool as that fight was, what really was the purpose of her getting stabbed? Like, were they really gonna get us to believe that she was dead? Like, do that on the second to last episode, like later in the season, and I'll buy it. But like, I knew she was safe.
Well, do it. In my opinion, they should have done it at the end of episode 2. Because then you're like, oh no, you got to wait for a week, like just at least to speculate some. So like that was my only like little thing about that, where I was like, okay, it's still, even though us as hardcore fans knew she wasn't gonna die, like it still is a whoa moment. Like when you see it, like I don't know, I wasn't expecting her to get stabbed like that, just because it was like, it was surprising. And then of course like insert all the amazing like Qui-Gon's the only person to get stabbed meme and die. But it's just like I just laugh so much because like if you think about it, guys, it's like Darth Maul gets chopped in half, lives. Emperor gets exploded in the Death Star, lives basically. You got Reva getting stabbed multiple times by Vader. You got
Grand Inquisitor getting stabbed.
Inquisitor getting stabbed. You get all these people getting stabbed left and right. Now Sabine, and it's like, I guess that's like, instead of the hand cutting off thing, that's going to be like this era's thing. Like, oh, are we just like, so basically what my interpretation of a lot of these stabby things are is basically if Qui-Gon would have had medical attention nearby, he would have survived on paper, I guess. But I don't know. It's just a funny thing at this point. But at least if you guys didn't notice, like the good thing is where she got stabbed, it was like more off to the side at least. So it wasn't like stabbing her through her chest or something.
Yeah.
So like that's the most important thing I think for me in that situation. But I really liked though with the fight, I really liked the choreography of that fight though. Just the way it looked, like the choreography and the cinematography combined, like the way it looked. I don't know. I just love the way Shin fights. Like I'm so interested in her character.
Yeah, Milton, you're our choreography guy here on the channel. And
you're damn right. It looks good.
You look good.
Look, this is why I'm gonna say it till the casket drops. Like we should have been getting these types of fights, especially in the sequel movies. And I know people will be like, Milton, all you do is complain about that, but it's like
Milton,
it logically makes sense to why we needed to get fights like this. And it's not like we didn't need all the twirls and stuff. I'm not asking for all the prequel stuff. But even with this is post Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Ahsoka's nice. Like Ahsoka grew up in the golden age of the Jedi, so she would have all that. But you can tell that Inquisitor he or she was nice, but he wasn't like, as you definitely tell, his level was not at the same level as hers. So he had to tweak how he fought. You see how Sabine was fighting. She was very much like Luke Skywalker from Empire Strikes Back.
Yep.
On her saber and fighting like that, which is a cool, because that makes sense though. She's very much basic. He's more like probably offensive, not really defensive like he was in Return of the Jedi. But that made it look great though. She wasn't hacking like a baseball bat. She wasn't hacking like she was cutting down a tree. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just keeping it 100.
Yeah.
Hey, that's my one boy always gets mad at me for saying this. I'm like, bro, there's no way Kylo Ren should have got wrecked by Rey. he was trained by Luke and freaking Kyle or what's his name? Snoke. I don't care if he got shot in the side. Feel me?
Well,
Like, he
yeah, like on paper, if you think about it, that'd be like if we threw Luke from A New Hope into a lightsaber fight. Like, it just wouldn't work. But yeah, like I really, it was really good the way they did. I think the stuff with Sabine, like the fights. I mean, Dave said it himself, you know, in that little documentary we referenced. Like he said, our fans know lightsaber fights, and like, you know, we brought him basically saying like, hey guys, we heard your critiques of lightsaber fights on these movies. We got you. So it's cool that they added that in here. I do also think, even though he's like a minor character in this premiere, I think we do have to mention, like with Sabine's introduction, the fact that they brought in the actor that plays Ryder Azadi to play Ryder was such a big surprise to me.
yeah,
Like,
that was pretty
Oh
impressive.
my gosh, Clancy Brown.
I was shocked because like when he first started talking, I was like, wait a second, is that Ryder Azadi? And they're like, oh, Governor Azadi, blah blah blah. And I was like, what in the world? Like it was shocking to me. That also gives me hope. Come on, bring in Hondo in one of these episodes. But it gives me hope that we might see some of our other like Rebels side characters as well. And the good thing is, like with Dave, is like he's like, okay, for us three here and our listeners and everybody else in the Star Wars online fansphere, it's awesome getting Ryder Azadi, but it's good that they use him in a way where it's not like, oh, you have to watch Rebels to get it. All Chris's mom needs to know is he's the governor of Lothal. That's it. Like, so it's cool. It just adds more value to us as hardcore fans, but then the general people, like our parents and stuff, they just get that he's the governor. Like,
dude, did you guys get the reference to Jai Kell, the guy that he introduced?
Yep.
He's one of the cadets from the Rebels episode in season 1 when Ezra infiltrates as a cadet and they're training, and that's like one of his like little people he's going up against.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, it's nice getting those little acknowledgments to the wider Star Wars galaxy. But yeah, I loved Ryder Azadi and just the fact that Clancy Brown, obviously they modeled the anime character after him, so it's like he fits right in there. And immediately I'm like, I don't remember him having lost an arm, so now I want to have again more backstory. Give me a comic book on like the taking back of Lothal from the Empire or the defense of Lothal from the Empire. Because in Battlefront 2, you're on a mission in Bespin, you're playing as Iden Versio, and Del Meeko's talking to you, and he's talking about like the Empire has control of Lothal at that point. So I imagine that there was probably like guerrilla war going on that planet for like the last like 6-7 years, and he's the guy that's leading the charge. He's sacrificing a lot, including his arm, to keep his nation, his country safe and all that sort of thing. So yeah, really appreciated that. Now, since we got into Lothal, I do want to break out and talk about the 2 major locations that we go to in this series. So what were your thoughts on Lothal, man? Just the overall scope, the look of it, everything.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was done really well. Like, I've seen the picture floating around online a lot. There's some shots of Lothal that are side by side, like 100% taken from Rebels. So it's cool just seeing like how accurate they got it. And the fact, guys, that this was all shot in the volume, you know? Like, it's
Really?
like, it's crazy to see how good it looks. Like, to me, like, not to like throw shade at Kenobi, but come on, Kenobi, you look at that show and then compare it to this show, it's like, how did this show get shot in the volume? And that did as well. And, you know, it looks drastically different. So, like, it's great seeing how good, like, Lothal looked. Like I said, it looked screen accurate to Rebels. So, like, you know, it makes, like I said, I really feel like John and Dave, like the way they do these things, like it really feels like they, you know, they have a good grasp on how to, you know, do things to make hardcore fans appreciate them. Like, you know, the look of Lothal, but also, you know, general people, you know, it looks like a really good Star Wars planet.
Yeah. I like the detail to the capital city and the spires. The way that's actually translated to live action is just the exaggerated nature of the animation, and just having that look the way it does, having it remind me of the special edition of Cloud City in Empire Strikes Back, where you see the Falcon like entering for the first time, it's weaving through all the buildings. a lot of nods to Empire Strikes Back there. It's just a really beautiful city, and then we go to multiple locations, the tower that Sabine lives in, the highways that she's flying across, like just they did a great job with that planet. Milton?
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think honestly, I didn't know it was shot in volume,
Me
so I was
neither.
like, oh. I mean,
Yeah,
obviously, we all know it's CG,
yeah,
but I didn't realize. I couldn't tell. I was like, oh, this looks
Mm-hmm.
like it was on location. Obviously, green screen, that type of thing. So I was very impressed with it. I love the planet. What was it called with the dome? They had the where the Night Sister was doing her magic. What was that planet
Darkana.
called? Yeah, I love that particular planet. I know it was very basic, like the outside of what we were looking at with the it was like on like a rock part and like the forest.
But
I
it had that
like
spooky feel or whatever, you
it
know.
had a spooky feel. I love how the palette was shot with the color. So now I was impressed with what we were getting with these planets. I think we'll get more of that, just because I feel like Dave is very good about wanting to show more color in Star Wars and more like different types of environments. So I was impressed with it. I couldn't really complain about that.
Yeah, and then the second episode just blew my mind because I'm a huge fan of Corellia,
Yep.
and ever since the Old Republic, spending many times in the black hole sector, grinding my ass off getting the gear in that game. I've always been staring at those buildings, and then they brought it to live action for the first time in Solo, and I loved it there. Just the major industrial complex of the Empire's creation of Star Destroyers and whatnot. And then we're gonna see it again, and it's like, okay, this is now controlled by the New Republic. But then seeing the spy element come into play again, like we've seen in Mandalorian plenty of times. I love seeing like the bureaucracy of like, oh yes, we have everything accounted for, but then it's like, oh, do we? And you have like just this epic duel with the droids with the Inquisitor over there. I just absolutely loved it, getting another look at Corellia.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
like
I thought that was actually. I'm glad we got to see that, just because I feel like in Solo we got a good glimpse of it, but not really expanded version of that planet. I think this particular episode really expanded on what the shipyard looks like, and what the Empire was using that planet for. So that really stood out for me. So I really enjoyed seeing it.
Yeah, it's great to see Star Wars including these major locations in the series. Like, how would we ever expect that they would throw Coruscant in, or Corellia, or Lothal, like these
yeah.
We did that with
huge
what was it?
planets?
Alderaan and
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Obi-Wan, Tatooine. We've gotten every major planet basically in Star Wars. We've seen it in the movies, the major ones. Our live action series are looking just as good, if not actually better, at this point. It's
Right.
just,
We still need to get a full like scope of Cato and Mordia. Just saying.
oh yeah.
Oh yeah,
Maybe the
like with
acolyte.
I mean, hey, you never know with like Dave involved. Um
Right.
but yeah, like with Corellia though, I think the cool part about this entire sequence as well, like one of the parts that made me, of course, like the normal fans wouldn't even think twice about it, but when they said SSD for the hyperdrive, I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh my gosh, a Super Star Destroyer
Yeah.
hyperdrive they're recovering? Like, what's going on here?" And then like even Hera saying like, the New Republic doesn't have anything in production that needs that type of a hyperdrive. Um, so I thought that was really cool, and it adds to more of the intrigue in the second episode because we get as you both mentioned, the duel between like Marak and Ahsoka was really good. Like I'm excited to see what they do with his character. I feel like we're like on a coin flip of whether it could just be a new character or a really interesting iteration of a character. So I think there's that with his, but yeah, like this episode was really cool because like the fact that like they were taking this hyperdrive to go back
Hmm.
to like basically the bad guy's location, Dracana or whatever, and they to go back there and then use it for the Eye of Sion. I had to note this in our group chat just because it was such an interesting point. So like the Eye of Sion to me, anyways, and like I feel like it's gonna be pretty much this big Jedi starfighter like ring
Yep.
where basically they're going to use it as a pseudo transport to get out to Peridia, basically. So that's another point. I'm not, based on the way Balin described it, like I've watched this 3 times already and I still am not sure exactly. But the way Balin describes it, I'm not sure if Peridia is like the journey, like basically the bridge to get to the other galaxy, because it's either that or that's what the other galaxy is called. But either way, oh, go on.
I was just gonna say, I thought it was just a planet. What'd you think about this, Milton?
Made it sound like what he said was like fairy tales or something, or stories or tales or something to that extent.
And then she said something about it's basically true.
I thought it was a planet, but then I think it's a planet.
Okay.
I think it's a planet or some type of system and made up of these planets. So I don't honestly have any idea. So I'm kind of looking forward to what that looks like.
Yeah, we'll see. With me, I think though. Like I was saying, though, with this whole Eye of Sion thing and going to Peridia and all this stuff, like that, to me, the Eye of Sion is going to be basically probably wrapped around the Chimera, and that's how they're going to get it back into our Star Wars universe. Like, if I had to put a buck down on it, I would say that's probably how they're going to do it. Because if not, I'm not sure exactly what they're using the Eye of Sion then for, other than just basic transportation. So yeah, like I thought that was a great. Interesting part. And of course, we can't like go without talking about the maps. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I just love seeing the maps like in Star Wars, like when they pulled up the galaxies and like Morgan Elsbeth is doing her whole monologue about the different galaxies and this sort of stuff. Like I just love seeing like the layout like in universe whenever they pull up maps like that.
First off, before we get any further, I just gotta say, Lucasfilm, couldn't you have named that device anything different? Because Eye of Sion, I'm automatically thinking of the Eye of Sauron, which was basically this like spokesperson for Sauron at the Black Gate in Mordor. And I'm like, really? Like, that's what they named this thing? Come on. I mean, you got Filoni, who loves Lord of the Rings.
Reminds me of Battlestar Galactica, because the Cylons are like the evil like robots empire of that particular. So I mean, it's Sauron or Cylons. It don't matter.
Anyway, go ahead. Yeah. But that's a mind blowing thing, guys. That is there other galaxies like this galaxy. So from my knowledge, what I know when it comes to the unknown regions. And I learned this from the canon Star Wars Thrawn Ascendancy trilogy, was based all in the unknown regions. And according to Thrawn, the unknown regions is an area of space that is a lot larger than what he calls lesser space, which is what we know of as the Star Wars galaxy that we're in currently, that we've known about, Corellia, Naboo. All those things are in the lesser space compared to... I forget the actual term he uses for where he is in unknown regions as a Chiss person, but in the unknown regions, of course, is very hard to navigate. You got like these crazy rifts and stuff, and you need like certain people that can actually, kind of like use force sensitivity to travel through hyperspace to get to from point A to point B and all that sort of thing. So I don't know if they're plotting a course to go to that other area, or if it really is like an entirely other galaxy that we've never even heard about. Like, if that's the case, this is going to blow the doors open on the lore of Star Wars, because it's
think about it, though.
Storytelling.
Yeah, about to say, that's what Ben just said. And also, too, I'll give credit to the Rise of Skywalker here. I mean, that's why you have the Wayfinders.
Yeah.
Maybe this is where, if we would have had a Wayfinder, maybe this is what Palpatine was going to use, at one point, when it comes to Thrawn or anybody in general, but maybe the Wayfinders get introduced or mentioned or name dropped to say, hey, you could have gotten here if you had a Wayfinder, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I don't know, but I think it's cool that we're getting the unknown regions expanded upon, because I do believe there's different galaxies out there. I mean, when it comes to Star Wars, hell, even in real life, look, I've never been in outer space. I have no plans to ever go. It wouldn't shock me. There's other galaxies hundreds of miles, light years away, and there's parallel universes or whatever the hell. Like, it just wouldn't surprise me, because you don't just make these ideas up. I mean, there's a reason why we make these ideas up. Maybe there is some truth to legends, as Ahsoka once said in one of the shows. So it's cool that Dave and his team is exploring this for us, and hopefully we see it. It'd be kind of cool. Be like, okay, this isn't just about Coruscant or Naboo. Like, there's things out there that we just don't even know yet. That Palpatine or not, Palpatine, or who's his master? Plagueis.
Yeah.
Maybe they were onto something at one point, and their plans changed.
Yeah, my ultimate hope, and I guess a part of the reason why I was honestly a little soured by this premiere is like I really wanted to see Thrawn. I was hoping like there'd be like that one last shot of like him in the trailer where we see at least the back of him or something, just as a reminder. But I'm hoping that like Ahsoka is sort of a backdoor entry of a new threat to the Star Wars galaxy that doesn't really come into mind until like the Rey movie, like 15 years later. I'm really hoping that they're laying the seeds for something greater, you know?
See, Chris, like I said, I have to give a shout out to my friend Star Wars Santa, but his thing he keeps falling on is they just need to do whatever they need to do for this show, the Mando show, whatever, the Mando movie, etc. But Thrawn just needs to like at some point mention the Grisk and then just let that fast forward to the Rey movie 15 years later, like, you know. And it's like that'd be cool, like to introduce something like that. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting just to see like how we get there, because this show basically is just a race against time for all intents and purposes. Like good guys racing to get to Ezra, bad guys racing to get to Thrawn. Who can get there first? And you know, like it's going along those lines. So it's gonna be crazy. Like I just can't wait to see just visually what this other galaxy like potentially looks like. That's what I'm interested to see, because I feel like with them making a big stink about this pretty much being a different galaxy, like they might throw like a curveball at us, like maybe something like physics wise, like, you know, there might be something just totally just random we're not expecting. I mean heck, maybe that's where we get the Purgle at or something eventually.
Yeah,
like
what if
like
yeah.
Yeah.
What if like Jedi can't really use the Force over there or something? Instead of having like the Ysilmari or whatever, like Ysilmari, instead of having them, what if Ahsoka goes there and suddenly has to do something else besides use the Force? She has to use a different tactic, and that's why Thrawn's over there. He can stay over there in that like Force bubble where he doesn't have to worry or something.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. No, that'd be different. I'm just curious, honestly. You know, what's Thrawn's mindset going to be when we see him? Like, is he going to be the same type of person? He's been banished for what? I guess I don't know what the time frame is.
10
How long
years.
has he been away?
10 years.
Be about 10 years.
And Ezra, I guess the same thing. But I'm curious what his mindset. Like, obviously they're not dead. So what were they doing?
Well,
what happened?
Yeah,
to them?
why aren't they back yet? You think they would have found out a way by now to get back on their own side of things, you know?
Well, here's a question to put out to both of you guys. Gosh, I'm just taking over asking questions now on the podcast. But here's a question to ask both of you guys, talking about Thrawn and Ezra. How this springboards me into the next character, Morgan Elsbeth. How is Morgan Elsbeth contacting Thrawn? Because she literally said Thrawn's reaching out to me through time and space. So like, is this just her just saying it like you know, like dramatically, or is she somehow, I don't know, like are we gonna get a mirroring of Callus and Zeb? Are we gonna potentially have like a Thrawn saying to Ezra, "Yo, if you reach out in the Force to this bad chick I know, you know, is it going to be something like that?" So Ezra's helping Thrawn. Like, how is Thrawn on paper, anyways, reaching out to Morgan Elsbeth?
That's exactly it, because we know that, and I love that we got the confirmation. I have a video on the channel that I put out all about the Night Sisters. So if you're unfamiliar with the Witches of Dathomir, go ahead and check out that video. But the idea that she is a user of the Force now, so she could receive a message like from Ezra or something, kind of like maybe what happens with Rey and Kylo. Like there's been, you know, situations in Star Wars where that has happened. I mean, hey, look, like Obi-Wan calling out to, Luke and Leia is the perfect example. That's been going on since 1980. So there you go. Like stuff like that can happen through time and space is what gets me crazy. It's like, what is this world between worlds
Sure. Yeah,
stuff? Like,
I'm curious what the group chat thinks. I mean, or not the group chat, the chat with our listeners. Like, what do they think? How do they think that she's communicating with him? Because she makes it sound like she's having a everyday conversation with this guy.
yeah. But another thing that really fascinated me was Balon's skull and his like force ability to like maybe like discern part of the future or something like that. I thought that was really interesting how she called on him to be like, what do you think of the situation? And he was like just like focusing, concentrating, and being able to look forward is interesting.
Yeah, that's different. I've never really seen that before, but hey,
Hmm.
see how it works out.
Yeah, yeah. I want to just kind of wrap up our discussion just by bringing out some random Easter eggs, talking about some things that were interesting. I have a couple. First off, I love seeing the E-wings. Love seeing how cool they looked. And that sequence with Sabine on the speeder bike. It's great that we're getting more lettered Star Wars craft, right?
Yep.
A wing,
I
B
love
wing.
those.
You got the U wing, Y wing, X wing. Like it's just fantastic. Great design too. It evokes like some things from I think it's like Kyle Katarn's ship kind of looks like that a little bit. So yeah, I loved the inclusion of the new Star Wars design.
Oh yeah. That's a great Easter egg. Like the new designs are always great for vehicles. Like the more vehicles the better. It's just always a good time, whether it be like you said, the E-Wing, the U-Wing, Sabine Speeder, like just all these different vehicles are always cool to look at just to see what they do. And then I always love like the way like the bad guys' ships always fly. They always make them so like ominous, when they fly away. Um, but for me, one of the big Easter eggs, I mean, this may break off into like a couple minute little discussion, but one of the big Easter eggs had to do with the credits of the show. So like this is going all around social media, and like there's no confirmed actor for Marak
Oh yeah.
and the Inquisitor, and then in the credits, Sam Witwer is credited, but doesn't say for what. So people are basically like this is, and like I alluded to earlier, it's kind of like a coin flip. But people are basically saying, so what did Dave? Are we gonna get some type of weird version of Starkiller potentially? Because think about this, like in terms of our Star Wars poetry, things rhyming in Star Wars. Like we'd have Anakin's apprentice Ahsoka fighting Vader's apprentice, potentially Starkiller, for one. But for two, there's a super, super weird clip from Sam Witwer from back in like June or May talking about how, Dave, him and Dave originally talked about bringing Starkiller into canon at some
What?
point. A different version of Starkiller as an Inquisitor, because Sam literally said
Oh.
Starkiller does the Inquisitor thing, and then they like went on from the idea and stuff. But that idea was out there. Like Sam Witwer talked about that, so it makes you wonder. Like, of course, this Marak character could be just a totally no-name character and get offed in the next episode by Ahsoka, but he did put up somewhat of a little bit of a fight to Ahsoka, and like you mentioned earlier, Milton, Ahsoka being such like a badass that she is, like normal Inquisitor, she would have like dispensed with pretty quickly. So it just makes you wonder: are they going to go new character route? Which I'm leaning toward like that's probably what it's going to end up being, just a new random Inquisitor, or is Sam Witwer potentially involved?
I don't think it's a random character anymore. If it was a random character by now, he would have been killed, like you said. The fact that he was in 2 episodes gets me to
Also,
believe.
well, one more thing to throw out there too for you, Chris and Milton both. It is interesting to think about. Like the character's name's Marak or Merrick,
Yeah.
and like Galen Merrick is Starkiller's name. So like it's very close in terms of like the way it sounds. But yeah, what do you guys think?
Well, I was already ready to believe this was going to happen in Star Wars Jedi Survivor. I was like, dude, the main antagonist is going to be him as an Inquisitor. I call it now, but I'm like, oh crap, this would work really well too. Now I'm looking at it. So I might actually get my wish just in another Star Wars project. But anyway, that's all I have to say about that.
I mean, God, I'm gonna be that guy today. Honestly, I hope not. I don't care. Like, I love Starkiller. I love the video. They were my favorite Star Wars games besides Super Nintendo, all those games. But I kind of don't want it because that's going to take away from Ahsoka. Because here, what's going to happen
Oh,
is I'm going to be blind and going to be like, oh my god, that's Galen. He should wreck Ahsoka easily at that point. Because
yep.
I'm gonna have that mindset as a fan and knowing his backstory, whether it's canon or non-canon. It's like there's no way. Like I don't want them together. Maybe they'll bring him. Maybe look. My idea is right now. This is my headcanon. Right now, uh, Starkiller is currently frozen in carbonite. Will be unlocked in the Ray movie in like 20 years. So so happen to accidentally find him frozen on carbonite. That's my headcanon. I don't want him in the show.
I just think it would be a really good foil for Ahsoka. That I'm thinking about it, like you have two apprentices, basically trained by as Anakin at different times of his life. Like
Yeah,
she could
I don't want
literally
that.
come to grips with, like his experience with Vader training him versus her experience with Anakin training him, and they could have similarities, and they could discuss like what it was like and where they're at
Yeah.
now and their psyche. And I think that would actually be like a really
Let
good,
me
like them fighting, and then all of a sudden like somebody says it, like Anakin said this,
Yeah,
and then
but
they
you know
let
what
their
though? Like,
guard down, and
here's
then
the
he
thing.
takes
Here's
off
the
his
thing. Here's
helmet.
the
It's
thing.
like I am Star
Honestly,
Killer.
but look, I'm gonna say this, and I might poo poo on you guys' parade. I'm sorry. That's too much. That's honestly too much cake. We don't need all that extra dessert because like that's us overindulging, in my opinion. And again, I could be wrong, and they could have already shot it, and good for them, and hopefully they make it great. I just feel like Star Killer is a character that needs to have his day by himself. Like he's a character
Dang.
that is still well beloved by the original Star Wars fans and even fans that grew up with it um in the late 2000s, whatever. Like you got to give that character his own like thing.
Hmm.
I just feel like that's just over like compacting the show with him. Because I tell you right now, I'm going to be turned off away from Ahsoka and more focused on Starkiller if we get him. And
I
I
But
think
think this show shouldn't do that.
Star
here's one
Wars,
thing.
can I say it real quick?
Yep, go ahead.
Star Wars has so much history of doing this. Like I just said it before, like they introduced Ahsoka, who is like this character that was like, oh my gosh, in Mandalorian season 2, it's like, oh my gosh, like no one cares about Mando because we got Ahsoka, and then she went away for a little bit, and then she gets her own series. Like, what happens if they introduce Star Killer now and they give us a new Force Unleashed game in like 2 or 3 years? It's like, all right,
And that'd
now
be
we get
fire.
like
I mean,
now we
look,
get him in the golden age of
listen,
him like training
do it
underneath Vader,
correctly.
killing Jedi.
Right? If they do it correctly, who I will not even hate. If they write it perfectly and it makes sense within the canon, great. However, I just feel like that can be really murky if you try to tie it into what we're doing now. It could be
Uh,
murky, and I could be completely wrong. That's why I'm trying to preface it in a way where
Yep.
if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I just feel like with this particular show, the focus is already on Ezra. It's already on Thrawn. It's on Ahsoka. It's like it's the building of the First Order. Again, we can't forget that
mm-hmm.
this is building up to the creation of the First Order, and then Snoke. Snoke's gonna not pop up in the show, but he's coming. He's somewhere coming up, like in the next 10 to 15 years of this canon. So like, we really need another impactful character at this point. I think they're trying to tell a clear story with the characters they got going on. I just think Star Killer will be too much, in my opinion, but I could be wrong.
I do think the way let's all intents and purposes, like I said, I feel like with this character, it's highly likely knowing the way they've done a lot of things. Then again, like you mentioned, Chris, they have introduced a lot of characters we didn't expect to come into live action. But I feel like it's probably going to end up being just a new character. But an easy way now, they have a super easy layup as to answer to, you can make tons of spinoff content potentially about a Star Killer character if you just leave him in the other galaxy. You know what I mean? Like if they, I don't know, somehow the bad guys have to leave and somehow can't cover Marak, like boom, maybe there you go. You have plenty of spinoff content with him in a different part of the universe. Like, so I think it's going to be interesting to see how they utilize this whole different galaxy thing, because it just opens up the door for tons of storytelling. Like I said, you can throw a Star Killer out there and be like, oh, he's trapped out there. Now you can just tell stories about, it's like like for our DC fans, it's kind of like the Matt Reeves Batman. Like it's like it's its own isolated thing with DC, but
Okay.
it's still DC. So I feel like maybe if they do something like that, because it is tricky, like you said, Milton. It is very tricky introducing Starkiller just because of like Ahsoka and then Balin and Shin and all these characters. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of interesting potential when it comes to this series. And heck, the crazy part is we're eventually, I mean, I would say probably getting World Between Worlds. So like, just imagine when we get that, like how crazy, like we talk about crazy stuff going on in these first two episodes, like how you mentioned, Chris, how crazy it is, like all this like outer galaxy stuff talking. We're probably getting World Between Worlds sooner rather than later. So it's just like, I wonder what they're gonna do with that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so much to just anticipate. These two episodes really did a lot with opening up the galaxy of Star Wars, opening up the world building, and yeah, I think it's time to just give our final thoughts and score out of 10. I'm going to throw this one over to Milton.
Yeah. So overall, my impressions of the premiere in episode 2, thought it was a good start. There's a lot of strengths with the show, some weaknesses, some things I really liked, some things I didn't like, and we talked about it tonight. Love the music, love the visuals, love the action. And, I love what they were trying to present to us visually. I think story-wise, it's a solid start. I think we need more context, and we'll get that in the next couple episodes. Hopefully, it doesn't take too long to get to the point of what we're trying to do. And I said it in my message, like, I know the point is to get to Thrawn and get to Ezra and see how that plays out leading into, future projects. However, with the past Star Wars projects, and I'm sure, our listeners would agree with me, with the last couple projects, aside from Andor, Disney has always gone this weird route of dragging out their stories instead of just taking them where they need to go right away, because they're only 6 to 8 episodes. Don't drag it. Get us to the point. Don't play around. Overall, I like this premiere. There were things on it that I think will improve as the show go on, and I said this in our one chat. I think they're doing it on purpose. I think certain things that they're doing to let us wait a second, they're doing it on purpose to get us to the end. Hopefully it pays off. So overall, I thought these two episodes together, out of 10, I would say 8.25.
You said 8.25?
8.25, yep.
Okay, I'm going to be right around you. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. I actually went up on my score. First reaction was like a 7 out of 10. But I look to see the achievement that they've done, and that outweighs the stuff that in my mind was more negative. So, as you mentioned, I'm pretty much going to echo what you said. Just the music, fight choreography, scale, visual effects, the bad guys. I love the introduction of Balin. I love the introduction or reintroduction of Morgan, giving weight to those characters, having that plot line have some kind of urgency to it, where it's like, okay, there is, as you mentioned, Ben, a race against time. The good guys are racing to save somebody. The bad guys are racing to get somebody that's going to cause havoc in the galaxy. It's simple as that, cut and dry. I just wish there was a little bit more from Ahsoka. I wish some of the dialogue was maybe a little bit quicker and snappier, like George Lucas would write. But this is not George Lucas here or whatever. But yeah, I would give it an 8 out of 10. I'm going to throw it over to you, Ben.
Yeah, for me, I really enjoyed the premiere. I thought it was a really good start. I love the movie feel to it, especially not even just because of the crawl, but especially because of the crawl. It set the tone. Like, this is something new. So pay attention. Like, it sets itself apart from the Mando verse shows, which is good, and even Andor. Like, so like it's good that it's like setting itself apart in a unique way like that, and it's making it feel more eventized now that it's at 9. So you have those good aspects to it, and of course, like you guys mentioned, the choreography, the visuals, story's solid where we're heading. Yeah, like for me overall, I thought it was a really good premiere. Like I mentioned, I think it was the best premiere since Mando season 2. So there's that. So for me, I would have to give it an 8.5.
Nice.
All right, so we all kind of hovered around the same score.
Also, are our listeners, are they putting their scores in? Are they doing that right now?
Say whoever's here, like, drop your score.
Yeah,
Because I'm curious to see what their scores are, because I feel like because I want to get a good sense of what the community out there is thinking. Because I mean, I'm on Twitter, but I definitely try to stay away from some Star Wars Twitter because it can be off the chain. So,
Well, well, Milton,
so I'm curious to see what they think with it. Go ahead.
When it comes to Star Wars Twitter, you could give them the perfect thing and they would still find something to complain about.
Yeah, right. Facts. No, because I asked that because I feel like I've always said this: if they premiere the episodes with 2 episodes, it tend to comes off better.
Mm-hmm.
No, and I feel like even if they would have just done 1, this would have been a solid premiere. But I think episode 2 strengthened episode 1.
Can you?
So that's why I went with my 8.25. Again, there were some flaws with it, but overall, it needs to set the tone. Hopefully they are now consistent.
I think people
also to throw out there too, guys. Finishing up this discussion on even the second part of this episode. So it's out there. I'm pretty sure Steph Green, the one who directed the second episode, is directing episode 3. So expect like that type of directing style, which I thought was pretty good, like in terms of like the action and the story beats and stuff. So that's something to like really look forward to.
Yeah, I love the kind of juxtaposition in the Corellia sequence where you have Hera in the skies, she's best at, right, with Chopper. Then you have her coordinating with Ahsoka on the ground fighting. Felt pure Star Wars to me, and I loved it. So everybody that's listening listening to this after the fact, watching this after the fact, throw in your scores, send them to us, hashtag outerrimtransmission on Twitter, on X, however you want to call it these days. And we would love to see that. We're going to be back same time as next week. We don't have the episode titles to my knowledge, but I guess they're doing it in parts. So just check out our review for part 3 coming up around the same time next week, around 7 o'clock Eastern time, Sundays. That's when we love to talk about the latest in Star Wars. We're going to leave it at that. This was a great discussion, diving into the characters, diving into the overall themes, diving into Easter eggs and all the goodness that we all love discussing when it comes to Star Wars. So it's been a blast, guys.
I'm excited for the show. Hopefully next week can continue to build on to what they started.
Oh yeah. What can the people find you doing online if you are online? I'll throw it over to you, Milton.
Look, they can follow me on Twitter at Milton Weber 7, as you see, or on Instagram at Milton 7 Weber. Usually I'm posting on Instagram some workout videos, some personal stuff in my life, whether it's my friends, family, or whatnot. Twitter, I like to retweet funny stuff or just retweet things about sports or whatnot. But if you hit me up, that's cool. Follow me. Keep it positive. If not, I'll smack you. I'm going to be doing my thing throughout the week, working, hanging out with friends and family, and doing me, going to the gym like always. So, yeah.
There we go. What about you, Ben?
Sounds like a really great way to do things. Also, a big thing I always love about doing these podcasts on Sundays now, we're only 2 days away from the next episode of Ahsoka. Yep. Like, think about that. So, like, that's definitely something to, like, get excited for. We're only 2 days away versus, like, oh, man, we got to wait more days. So, like, it's nice that we're only a couple days from that. But, yeah, for me, I'll just be talking Star Wars and fitness on Twitter at RealBenMaynard, and then on Instagram, I try to post my workouts or fitness-related updates at RealBenMaynard as well.
All right, and you can find me here on youtube.com/Starrapter if you're watching. Thank you very much. I actually am over on the Star Wars Underworld a lot these days. Me and Matthew Nigebauer are talking about the comics on a weekly basis. We do like a lunchtime stream around 12 p.m. Eastern on every Thursday, I think, or we're at least going to try to do it weekly. We'll see how that goes. Yeah, last week we talked about all the latest Star Wars comics from like up to 3 weeks ago. So go ahead, check that out. Check out my comic book reviews, and if you want to have any kind of companion material to Ahsoka, if you just finished watching the episode, you wake up the next day, like Milton, you're on the treadmill warming up or whatever, I usually have a video up for you guys to watch that has something to do with the episodes, usually spoiler specific, so be aware of that. So yeah, I'll have a little bit more content than I have been putting out in the last several months, because it is that time to be a Star Wars fan and be excited about it. So there you go. So for Milton, for Ben, for Chris, aka Starrapter, this was Outer Rim Transmission, episode 119. Thanks for watching. May the Force be with you, and transmission.